Welcome, everybody. So every time I present about machine learning, there's two groups of people. Some people say that, does Oracle really have some tools for machine learning? And then there's another group saying that, yeah, I know Oracle has machine learning tools, but I don't know which one to use because they have so many, so I'm not going to use any of those. So if you are either of these groups, I hope after this session you know much more about machine learning tools for Oracle people. My name is Heli Helskyaho. People know me as Heli from Finland, and I will be moderating today. And first of all, we have here Edelweiss. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Heli. Well, my name is Edelweiss Kammermann, so it doesn't sound very Latin American name, but I'm from Uruguay, South America. I'm Oracle ACE director, and I have been working with Oracle technologies for more than 20 years. I usually present in conference. Well, until last year, traveled to presenting in conference in other countries. And we are running the Oracle user group in Uruguay, and I'm part of the Latin American Oracle user community. So I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Welcome, Edel.
So
Then we have, oh, sorry.
yeah, no,
Yes.
go ahead.
Then we have Charlie here. Welcome, Charlie.
Welcome, guys. Hi, Charlie Berger here from beautiful Boston. I'm the Senior Director of Product Management for Oracle Machine Learning.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. And then we have Jeroen here. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Heli. Hi, everyone. So I'm a Product Strategy Manager for Analytics and Data Science at Oracle. And in practice, that means I get a lot of time to play with this technology and then also to train others on that technology or to do workshops with customers and get them enthusiastic about the topic.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. So my idea here is that first we will introduce you these technologies so that you know what we are talking about. Feel free to have, if you have any questions, feel free to just type them in a Q&A and we will try to answer all of them. First of all, I would like to ask Edel, would you like to show us something, one of the tools that Oracle is offering for us? What is that and what would you like to tell us?
Yes, I want to tell us about the thing that I usually work with, which is Oracle Analytics Cloud. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Perfect.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Okay, so this is Oracle Analytics Cloud. It's an analytic platform that have the possibility to prepare your data, analyze your data, and also like telling the story behind your data. So you can create, wonderful visualizations, very easy. You can go and prepare your data and do some transformations. We're going to see all of that. But another thing that you can do is create machine learning projects. Okay, so machine learning models, sorry. So this machine learning that you can create here, and I want to be very clear with it. What is the benefit of using Oracle Analytics Cloud for machine learning? If you are, for example, a business user or a business analyst, or you are IT people that doesn't have much experience of machine learning, this is a very good start point to start playing with it, right? So one thing that I just also want to highlight before going through a kind of lead demo. So you have to I love to take the risk of a live demos in recording sessions. So let me talk about what are the types of machine learning models that you can create with OAC. So it's not like you can create every single machine learning model that you can imagine. So the things that we can create in OAC is the supervised ones. And remember that the supervised machine learning models are the ones that you specify the output to the machine learning model, okay? So for example, what you want is to have the number of bikes that you're going to rent for the next month. Or you want to have a set of patients that you want to predict which ones are going to have a heart disease in the next minute, something like that. Or the binary classification, which is the typical result is going to be true or false, or 1 or 0, yes or no. This type of two different possibilities. And then you have the unsupervised, which is going to be clustering. And this typical example of that is when you want to do segmentation of customers, for example. So maybe you have a set of clients And then in the unsupervised machine learning models, you are not specifying an output. The machine learning model is going to learn and to find patterns of the data set that you are bringing. So basically the idea is, for example, I have a bunch of customers and I want to create a loyalty program. And I want to understand which ones, depending on the income, depending on the money that they spend in my company, which ones are the most values for me, okay? This type of things. We are not working with a reinforcement type of machine learning models, which is like the supervised, but a continuous process of learning, okay? So just to be clear, this is the type of machine learning models that we can use and we can create. And come back to the tool, okay? Okay, so basically for this example, I'm going to work on the rental bikes. Okay, so we're going to work with 2 data sets. Why 2 data sets? Because with 1 data set, I'm going to build, to create and train the model. And the other data set, I'm going to apply the model. So for example, in the first one, I have historical data from the rental bike for the last year. And I want to predict what is going to happen in the next quarter, for example, right? So this is the data sets that we have, all the data sets that we have. We're going to use this one, which is the bike rental training. Just double click it, and I can create a new project about it. I can analyze what is the data. Because one thing that is important is in order to have a good result, you need to spend some time creating the right data set, okay? So here we don't have enough time, so we are going to start working with a already prepared data set, but you have to spend a lot of time trying to find the right data set for you. And how do you do that? So obviously you need to be completely sure what is the goal that you want to achieve. In this case, we want to predict the number of bikes that we're going to rent for the next quarter, right? So we have the output, which will be the count of bikes, the number of bikes. But with that only, it's impossible for a machine learning process model to learn. So you need to add more context. What are some columns that have more value to this situation? So in this case, we added we have all the amount of bikes that are rented per day. So we need to specify which type of day it is. So it was a holiday, it was a weekday. How was the weather? It was cloudy, it was rainy, it was a clean day. How was the temperature? You know, the wind speed, the humidity. So all of this is going to bring context, and the machine learning model is going to learn from that, okay, and get a better prediction. So in the, close this. So in the prediction, in the preparation data step, you can modify some of this data. You can apply some of this function. It's a very simple preparation, but you can also have some recommendations that Oracle Analytics Cloud gives to you depending on the data. So for example, if you have here, instead of wind speed, you have, I don't know, the credit card number, he will realize that this is number that you have here is basically very similar to a credit card number. Do you want to encrypt it? So you can apply, you can select this recommendation and apply it to the script, and that's it. No, it's simple like that. Okay, so I will just want to show you what are the data that I have here. So let's start creating the machine learning model. So in order to do that, I need to create something that is called data flow. A data flow is like a mini ETL, we can say that, but it's completely a graphical interface. So you don't have, again, to enter any line of code. So let's work with the data set that we have. Okay, I will add this data set. And this data set can be any type of source that you can imagine, right? It can be an Oracle, obviously, any Oracle database, could be Excel file, could be Amazon Redshift, could be Google Analytics, could be a Snowflake, could be whatever you want. Okay, so this is the data set. If you see, this is all the steps that we can add. And maybe we can want to select, maybe you have a very big data set. You don't want to have every single column there for this machine learning model because not all the columns bring some value to this. Or you can just select the type of machine learning model that you want. Okay, I will choose one of the four that I can. And the next step is to select the target column. What is the output that we have to learn about it? What is going to be the result? You select count, because it's the count of number of bikes. You create the model, save the model. Simply this. We also save this new data flow. Okay. And just let's run it. Okay. So it will take a few seconds, sorry, and we will have the machine learning project just like that. Okay. So if we come back to the machine learning place, you will see that just now we created a new machine learning model. And this new machine learning model, we can apply it to any other data set that makes some sense, right? So let's create a new data flow to apply this data model to another data set that doesn't have the output. Okay, so this new data set is the data set that I want to predict how many bikes I'm going to rent for the next quarter. So let me select this data set. And again, these two are Excel files just for, to do it easily, but it can be anything that you want. We have our data set and we have to apply model, okay? And I'm going to select what is the model that I want. In this case, a new model that I created. And because we don't have the column, we don't have the target, we need to create that column and put a name. So something like that, right? Okay, so you have to define also the inputs. So you need to define which column from this data set is going to match with the columns of the machine learning model, and then save the data. And this save the data is going to create a new data set that will have the predicted output. So let's create, and I'm simplifying a lot all the things that you can do a lot of things, but I need to keep it on time, so we cannot spend 1 hour on this. Something like that. Okay, and we just run it, and we are going to have a new data set. Okay, I already have a data visualization for something similar. So for example, if I go to projects, I already create one, and I want to spend a few minutes explain you what are the things that we can do here. So this is the predicted data set that I just have created, and I can create new visualizations here. And the way, this is one that I already have. We can, for example, select the predicted value, just like that. It's very easy. OCE is very easy to use, very intuitive. It has the power to create very easy and quickly a lot of great visualizations. You can have define a trend, for example, here, a trend line, which is an analytic function, and I didn't have to code it, okay? So all of these things, you can do it, as you see, very, very quickly. I can also create a new visualization and found out if I work day or not, by the day of weekday, how many bikes we are going to rent, okay? So there's a lot of things that you can do here. And this is what you can, for example, if we want to analyze the things that I have done before, and we analyze the information that we predicted, it makes sense, right? Because it's a bike. So when it's more colder, like usually in December in US, this is probably less bikes that we're going to rent, because when it's very cold and it's snowing in New York, nobody going to, to be riding a bike. And also for example, I also add some of the columns that was part of the data set, like how the weather it is. And if it's clear, obviously it's more nice to was riding a bike. And if it's cloudy, and if it's light rain, it's very, very few predicted number of bikes that we have to for rent. This is a very, very high level experience of the things that you can do with machine learning on OCE, but it's very, very simple and easy. Another thing that you can do, for example, is to, and I just want to show you a few things. When I mentioned that you can create any connection, any data source, any data set, look at this, okay? You can create, so one thing that you can do, I just use it two simple data sets, but you can have sources from Oracle, you can have sources
can you
from
show
Python.
the Oracle one? Because we have a question about how to connect to the Oracle database.
Yes.
So maybe you can show that.
Yes. You can put the connection name, host, port, service name, client wallet if you have it, username and password. And one important thing is, if you, for example, so this tool is ideally for people that doesn't have much experience, you don't have a huge set of data. So you're still playing with the tool. But imagine that you're in a company, you have maybe a DBA that becomes a data scientist recently and create some machine learning models very interesting in the database. Then you can register here the machine learning model that, and it could be autonomous data warehouse or can be also common Oracle database. And you just select and register your machine learning model. You will see the details, which type of algorithm, for example, here, decision tree, you register it, and then you apply it in the same way that we applied before. You just select a data set. One important thing, it has to be the same data set, the same database that the machine learning model is created. And that's it. You apply the model. And you will.
Thank you, Edel. That looks
select
really easy. So these
Thank
machine
you.
learning models that you just registered here, they are made in the Oracle database using the Oracle Machine Learning for SQL, right? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So any questions, feel free to type in the Q&A, and we will go to Charlie now, who will actually tell you what is this Oracle Machine Learning for SQL or Oracle Machine Learning in general. Charlie, go ahead.
All right, hi guys. I'm sharing right now, and hopefully you can see this. Everything okay? You can see it?
Yes.
All right, great. Hi. In my little 12-minute cameo here, I'm going to try and tell you about Oracle Machine Learning, give you a quick overview. If you have any questions, you can follow up with me there. The main punchline is that we move the algorithms to the data. I work with about 30-something really smart PhD machine learning developers that build algorithms. They don't, we interface with Python and R and things like that, but we develop our own algorithms inside the database, and that's really our secret sauce. We move the algorithms inside the database, and as of December 5th, 2019, these algorithms all became free. So I've thought about growing a beard and becoming Santa Claus, because everywhere I go, it just feels like you're sharing something that people did not know. So let's see. So the product is called Oracle Machine Learning. It used to be called Oracle Advanced Analytics. It's also gone by other different names over the years: Oracle Data Mining, Oracle Data Miner, Oracle R Enterprise. We've gotten control of our senses. We just call everything Oracle Machine Learning now. And what it does is it extends the database to enable users to build AI applications and analytical dashboards. We also interface and expose these 30-something algorithms that we've built natively inside the database as really SQL functions. We also expose those to other popular languages. So if you speak R, you speak Python, you can drive these algorithms. And what we're trying to do by supporting this whole community of different users is to make machine learning simple, because something like 87% of data science projects fail to go to production. And here, if you just build a model, apply the model, your whole script works inside the database as a script, you're done. It's really straightforward. So we really do try to spend a lot of time trying to make machine learning simple. And as I said, there's no extra cost. As of December 5th, this is all free. There are different user interfaces or APIs or GUIs or notebooks that you would use depending on your, depending on you and your environment. This little gray divider line over here is trying to indicate that over on this side, we're talking about things that are primarily on-prem, or database as a cloud service. So you can install and run whatever you want in your own environments. And we support R, we support the Oracle Data Miner drag and drop GUI that's part of SQL Developer. And this is where for the longest time most people operate, and many people use these. The GUI is extremely easy to use. There's a lot of people who just use that. On the autonomous database, we go over to these notebooks. We're really trying to put a very simple, easy experience in front of the customer so they can just go to a browser, click, and off they go. And I'll show a little bit more of that in a minute. We're adding Python in the next, later on this calendar year. But it's the same algorithms, you just have different sort of touch points. You can always just use SQL, right? At the core, it's just pure SQL. This is the roster of algorithms that we have. It's over 30 now. The newest ones are XGBoost and MSET, a process monitoring algorithm. But if you want to do what Adel just showed, we have a number of different techniques inside the database to do that. Same thing for regression, market basket analysis. And the interesting thing is, and I'll show this later on, the OCE development team has been now integrating with these things. So you can register models that, let's say, I built inside the database and Adel wants to use from OCE. So you can just point to one of those models and score it. And I'll show you that in a second. So the other thing that I think is really interesting in this slide is that if you have unstructured data, we just use Oracle Text. It's another free feature of the database. It supports a number of different languages, and we'll just tokenize all that data into a vector of terms. So in the example I'm going to show, we're going to try and find a good bottle of wine. There's all these wine reviews, and they say rich, full-bodied, or whatever, and those words we're going to use as additional information to try and build a smarter predictive model. So when you move the algorithms to the database, it just opens up all these doors and opportunities, because you also have things like SQL patterns, SQL windowing functions. And if you're a clever data scientist trying to do something simple or trying to do something complicated, when you have things like check fraud, where you have like the distance between the locations where the checks were written, and you want to factor that into it. You want to include, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of graph relationships. Well, we have spatial, we have graph, we have all these different features that you can, pull from. Under the hood, it is really as simple as DBMS data mining create model. And the example I'm going to use, we're going to do a predictive model for predicting wine. We have the ID. I've taken the target field, which was points, and I've binned that into above 90 points and below 90 points. So I've taken a numerical value and I've transformed into what we would call a categorical, and we're doing classification. We're just trying to predict good wine, bad wine, and we will assign a probability to it. Once I have that model built, if I want to insert this model into a REST API or put it under an application or just run it as a batch score, whatever, it's a first-class object in the database, and I can do a lot of things with that. So we're really trying to enable applications. On the autonomous database, we have a number of simple notebooks. I can say they're simple because I wrote most of them. Had some help on a few of them, but they're pretty straightforward and simple. And what I've done with customers is just say, go take the closest thing to what you want to do, download it, open it up, edit it, and make it yours for your own data set. And that's what we're going to do now, is one that I did with a couple other people, and I acknowledged them at the end, Sadesh, Eugenie, and Devani, Seth, who have done a lot of work with me on this one, because we're doing some complicated things. But we have a data set from Kaggle that first came to my attention from Francesco Tasso, who does a great job with a similar kind of demo. I've taken this a little bit further, and we have a bunch of data, and we're going to use the CRISP DM, business understanding, data preparation. We're going to do all of this inside the database, and then when we're done for deployment, we're just going to leave the data inside the database. We're going to come back and look at it through OAC, Oracle Analytics Cloud. So here is the notebook. I've got a live version. I'm going to cut over to show that if I have another 30 seconds at the end. But we have a notebook experience. You can put pictures, you can put text in there. The nice thing is you can kind of explain what you're doing for others. And our business problem is to find a good bottle of wine. I think it was above 90, not 92. I might have to change that. And so we have all these model inputs. We're going to take the points field and we're going to recode that into greater than or less than 90 points. We have all this unstructured data that we're going to use Oracle Text and Oracle Machine Learning to do all that under the hood. So we define our problem. We look at our data. We might look at our data a little bit more through notebook visualizations that come with Zeppelin notebooks. We're using Zeppelin notebooks rather than, I think, Jeroen's going to show a Jupyter notebook with OCI Data Science in a minute. These are Zeppelin notebooks. So we have the good wines are on the right. That's what we want to really try to find, looking at all this information of new unlabeled wine. Because the idea is we're going to a party, we want to maybe bring a bottle of wine or drink a good bottle of wine, but we don't want to spend too much, right? We just want under $20. Can we get away with a good bottle of wine? So we're going to add this attribute column, the points bin. We're going to populate it with a greater than or less than 90 points kind of concept here. And at the end, we're going to have a target field that's going to be greater than or less than 90 points. If you use the GUI that I showed you before, you don't have to do all this code. The GUI will generate the code for you, but you don't have to do this code. In the new Oracle Auto ML user interface that we're doing, you will have a GUI that will do all these steps for you and then generate the code. So right now, you would take the code that we wrote or something out of GitHub and repurpose that. But one of the things you have to do is split the data. You might have to do stratified sampling. We support all those kind of things. We're dealing with unstructured data, so we have to deal with that. We're going to do some just quick visualization. What's a good wine? You know, where are they coming from? United States, France, Italy, a bunch of great places. We're going to visualize the data a little bit more. And in the Zeppelin notebooks, you can do a lot of cool things, but it's not like what Adel just showed you. That's not its really primary purpose. I think we're going to talk about using the right tool for the right job here. But for machine learning, this is a pretty good tool, especially if you have your data inside the database. So when we build our model, it's just this begin, dbms data mining create model. There's my syntax. And that model, look at it. Well, this one took 1 minute and 3 seconds because it's 130,000 records and it's using unstructured data as well. But now when we look at it, even in the unstructured data in the description, if you have these words, it sort of indicates that's a good wine or a bad wine. We're going to continue on. We're going to build a random forest model. Now in other demos, I build 5 or 10 different types of models. Here, we're just going to build one. We built it. It took 10 minutes. So we're doing a fair amount more data and unstructured data, so it takes a little longer. The other one, if I have time to show you, it takes like 1, 2, 3 seconds every time it builds a model. We evaluate the model. We show a lift chart to see how good the model is, and it gives a pretty good lift. So that's a good indication we've got a good model going on here. We can view the model coefficients, which is kind of techno speak for, yeah, that's what it does under the hood, the math. And I'm going to trust that it does a pretty good model because over here I got a pretty good lift, right? So if I want to review that model in greater detail, I can do that. I actually do that in Oracle Analytics Cloud, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now I score the model against new data. So now I have a bunch of other bottles of wine that are unlabeled. I don't know if it's a good bottle or wine or not, but I have a probability. I have the description. I have a lot more information about that. I'm going to now leave all that data inside the database, and I'm going to come back. Well, there's my table. So I have this wine predictions. And I'm going to celebrate. It's late in the day for you guys. I'm still drinking coffee here, but you guys can celebrate. And you can go look at these results in Apex or Analytics Cloud. I'm going to go use something else that is a new feature. I'm going to go to Oracle Analytics Cloud, and I'm going to register a model. Now, I could just point at that table, right? I could do that easily. But I'm going to register a model. I'm going to go take it further. The OCE development team has been doing a lot of great work here. So I'm going to pick my wine model. I get to see the random forest. I get to see all the information about it. I'm going to do the workflow kind of thing, the flow that Adel showed before, and I'm going to apply my model, and all that is going to run inside the autonomous database. So I'm not using the algorithms that come with OCE that are outside the database. I'm using the 30-something algorithms that come free in the autonomous database. So I'm harnessing all that, and then when I'm done, I have all these predictions, probabilities. I have where everything came from, and I drill through this in various ways until I finally maybe find some suspect, kind of bottles of wine here. Here's a Cabernet for only $16. That has a pretty good chance of being a pretty good bottle of wine. And my favorite graph is this one here, because what we've done here is take a look at all the attributes, the unstructured data, the little words that are used to describe good bottles of wine and the words that are used to describe bad bottles of wine. And that's just using a DM $VL wine. It's interrogating the model itself inside the database. So you can do a lot of really cool things. And together, I think we'll talk about this at the end. I think all these things together really are the most powerful, weapon against data-driven problems. And it all starts with data, and it starts with data inside the database. There's a whole series of blogs and different things about, sort of evolving your skills to become an Oracle data scientist. We can talk about that later on. There's a bunch of different links over here, and I'm going to say thank you and acknowledge my collaborators. While we transition over, not to be outdone by Adel, I'm just going to go up here and say run all paragraphs, just to show you this sort of live demo thing, and you can kind of see if this thing wakes up, how it's just going to kind of walk through everything here. And as I keep on going down further and further, eventually, hopefully it'll get down to here and you'll see it do things in 1, 2, or 3 seconds. With that, I am going to hand it over to our next speaker, Jeroen.
Thank you, Charlie.
Heli.
Yes. So what you were telling us now is that there's actually some PL/SQL packages in a database, and you had different interfaces that you can use.
They're not PL/SQL packages. They're not PL/SQL. They're SQL functions and PL/SQL scripts. So they're more tightly embedded inside the database than a PL/SQL.
Yes, that's what
you could write a PL/SQL package, of course, with these different things, but it's tighter, more tightly integrated than that.
Yes, but we have a question here. So if I'm not in the autonomous yet, I just have the on-premises 12.2, am I able to do what you just showed us?
Yeah, you can. What you do there is this bit of the lowest common denominator is the code itself, the SQL functions. And if you go to the documentation, they're very atomic level sort of functions. It's like, Python or R. And so these are the SQL functions. You can use currently the R syntax, if you know R, to derive those same functions. But at their core, they're SQL functions. And we also expose those SQL functions because not everybody is a data scientist. That's not all data scientists. Not everyone wants to write code, I guess is the way I should say it. And so what you would do on premise, what most people do most of the time, I guess I'm going way back here, is to use the Oracle Data Miner, which is part of SQL Developer. So come back up here to the top, just watching the clock here, and I'll get off the stage here. You're going to use Oracle Data Miner. That's what you use. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you. So while I let Jeroen talk, Edel and Charlie, will you see the question? There's one question in our Q&A. Jeroen, please tell us about something interesting.
I'm going to talk about OCR Data Science, and I also try to do a little demo at the end. So OCR Data Science is a workbench for data scientists that want to develop machine learning models using Python. So here I've shown a few of the well-known open source libraries for machine learning with Python. So TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, you name it. And well, there's a large community out there around these libraries, and these are continuously being developed. And that's appealing to a lot of companies out there. And this is why a lot of them choose pure Python as their go-to language for building machine learning models. So this service is aimed at those companies, right, that go for that. So this is also for expert data scientists, just like OML, but then this uses Python, and it's certainly not meant for business users like what we saw with OAC. So this is a managed service that streamlines the whole life cycle of machine learning development. And the end goal is really to get those Python developers being very productive, and productive by really removing a lot of the roadblocks that they typically face. For example, getting access to data, that's typically a roadblock. Getting access to compute power, that can also be tricky. We want to make that very easy for them. And we certainly don't want to force them to do infrastructure or like engineering kind of tasks, because in practice, nowadays, data scientists with Python still have to do that, and they often don't have that skill set. So we try to simplify that for them so they can focus really on the data science at hand and get them productive. Now, this service runs only on Oracle Cloud, and that means that it can use all the resources in Oracle Cloud infrastructure in OCI. So if we look at the red bit here at the bottom, we have all these different shapes, these compute shapes on OCI, from 1 or 2 OCPUs to very high performant machines with 50 plus and more CPUs, and also GPU shapes, which are often used in data science, especially for deep learning, etc. So you can run those small workloads, but also very, very demanding workloads in a very cost-effective way, actually. So apart from that, this is also done very seamlessly for the, oh, you see my camera has stopped. So that sometimes happens. I'm very sorry about that. I'll turn it on again if I can. Sometimes that happens with my camera. So that's very seamless for the data scientist. They really press a few buttons and they can change these shapes. So they don't have to be data engineers or infrastructure specialists for that. If you look at the blue bar, running on OCI also means you have access to this whole data ecosystem that you have, all this data management ecosystem. So you have also access to ADW, the Autonomous Data Warehouse, to object storage, MySQL, You have access to all of the data integration that you can imagine. So batch integration, ETL, streaming, it's all part of this one ecosystem. And that is kind of a big deal for all these Python developers, because if they worked before in these separated, isolated environments, now it means they can bring all this data together in one central place, and they can govern that data, keep it secure, instead of having it flying around. Take also away that OCR Data Science is data source agnostic. So yeah, we have all those Oracle data sources that we can connect to, but also other Oracle databases from other vendors, or completely different things from AWS. It's also data format agnostic. So you can use nicely structured data from a database, but you can also work with things like text, images, video, audio. So that's typical the kind of thing you want to look to Python for. Yeah. Yeah, and then on top of that, you have the data science service, right? So you have on top of this OCI infrastructure, you get all of these features. So let me dive into those things. Now, first of all, we have this concept of a project, and that's really like a unit to organize your work. You can split your work or share with team members. You can get people to collaborate. You can get data scientists to share their work. And then the place where really all the work happens is in the notebook. And the notebooks are Jupyter notebooks, as Charlie already said. So that's similar to the Zeppelin, what you're using with OML. And this thing allows you to mix Python code with visualizations. It allows you to document your code in one place. This is all preloaded with a lot of those open source or all those libraries that I showed in the beginning. And that means that people, you know, it's already ready to go. They don't have to do any work to load those libraries. They can just start using them. Now, apart from that open source stuff, and Jupyter is, of course, in principle also open source, there's some really specific things that Oracle has added. And the one thing you have to take away is the Accelerated Data Science SDK. So this is a Python library developed by Oracle, and it automates a lot of the common tasks that data scientists typically have to do. So there's automation around, well, automation, or it makes your life simpler with just a few lines of code. So there's things like data ingestion, profiling, data visualization, feature engineering, AutoML, just like Charlie was talking about, but now in Python. Also model evaluation and model interpretation. So that's all done with this ADS library. So the idea is just with a few lines of code, you can really do a lot of things, and you can be, well, you can accelerate the work that you're doing as a data scientist. And I hope I can also get some time to show that. Now, last of all, model management and model deployment. So the catalog, the model catalog, is a place where you can store your models that you've built. And when a model is ready, you kind of package it up with all the relevant artifacts, and you keep it in this catalog. And it's important to save those models because you can track what's happening with the model. You can see which models in production, and anytime you have an issue, like why did this model make this prediction in production, you can always go back, see which model it was, exactly what code was used to train it, and also what data was used to train it, to do some debugging. And model deployment, it's a very common problem now that when you develop the model, for a data scientist, it's actually quite hard to bring it into production. So I said that before, sometimes we're expecting our data scientists also to be infrastructure specialists, and they don't necessarily have that skill. So with this managed model deployment, it's just really a few mouse clicks to bring a model into production and to run it on OCI, really hiding all that complexity for those data scientists. Okay, so now I'm going to attempt to demonstrate some of this. So let me just share my my browser window here, just a second. As soon as this comes up. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, there we go. So we're looking at OCI Data Science. And before I jump into one of these notebooks, how much time do we still have, Heli? A few minutes?
4 minutes. You are good.
Sorry? Yeah?
4.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so this is the data science project I was talking about. So first, have a look here at this notebook that's inactive. All right, so maybe a data scientist, he worked on this yesterday and he turned it off for the night. That means that that notebook is not billing, right? It's not costing any money. And when he wants to activate that again, look at this, he can choose what shape he runs it on. So he can choose the, let's say, the amount of compute that he needs. So today he's going to run this on the full data set, or for many generations, he can pick a bigger shape. I've got this one GPU shape I can also pick here. That's because I don't have, well, I don't have access in my tenancy to these other GPU shapes. But this is how easy it is for a data scientist to change shapes. It's very flexible, right? And it's very easy. You don't have to be an engineer or an infrastructure specialist. Right, so now let's go into one of these notebooks, and I've got that open here. So this is Jupyter, right? Here you can mix all that code and well, documentation to describe your code. I've got this this example open here of employee attrition, so predicting who's going to leave my company. And I just want to show off a few of these things that ADS, this special library, can do. So here you see we're importing like a bunch of these classes, right, from ADS. And let me see what I can show here. So we're using this ADS Python object. And for example, it only takes here one line of code, show a notebook. So sorry, here we've loaded the data set, right? We've loaded this data set of attrition data. And only with this one line, we get all kinds of statistical information about all the columns in there, right? Mean, max, standard deviation, you name it. We get charts with the distribution of all these, well, all these attributes, all these features. This is stuff that data scientists typically do, right, and spend a lot of time on that and have to do a lot of coding. So here's one line. It also does, well, I'm not sure why it jumps down. Sorry about that. It also does a bit of, checking for potential problems. So it has found out that there's this column name. It says it's high cardinality. Yeah, those are the employee names. Of course, we don't want those in my model. It also sees, yeah, these columns have missing values. So you might have a problem there, and it can actually advise on which columns it removes from your data set before it does the training. Let me see. You have also one-liners, for example, to fix imbalances in the data. So in this case, we have many more people, of course, staying than instead of leaving the company. So that's just one line of code to fix those kind of imbalances and resample the data set. There's auto ML as well. So in this case, a few lines of code to compare different algorithms. And after choosing these algorithms, also comparing checking which hyperparameters give the best results. So you get a nice overview. Logistical regression in this case has the top score, the best validation score, and these were the hyperparameters used. Let me see, because I'm probably nearing the end of my time. So let's leave it there for ADS. I had one other thing I wanted to show you, and this is a notebook on detecting pneumonia from X-ray images. So just by having a look at these X-ray images, letting a model actually say, hey, there's likely a pneumonia going on in the lung, or there isn't. I'm not really going to go into the notebook itself, but this is kind of a typical case that you want to approach with the OCI Data Science service, because this is really treating unstructured data. And in this case, they're building a convolutional neural net. That's a typical thing you do to build models on images in this case. And you see, this is the kind of architecture that they're building. It's very simple in this case, but it really gives you this control over building these kind of models, in this case working with Keras, and working with unstructured data. So we have several customers that use OCR Data Science to do just that. So this is data, of course, you don't have typically in a database, and you're going to look at Python for these kind of to solve these kind of use cases. Maybe one last thing. So if people start to work with this, there's a bunch of notebook examples here. So there's really, for all the common tasks that you might want to do, like how to load data from certain sources, how to work with this ADS library, that's all the, let's say, the common tutorials that you might expect, you can find them here. So have a look at that, I would say. And I'll leave it at that. So
Thank you, Jeroen.
back to you.
So if I say that if I'm a Python person, so I really love Python, but I know nothing about machine learning, is this the tool for me? It kind of helps me to understand machine learning.
It can be. It can be because there's a bunch of tutorials on starting machine learning, for example, with Python. Yeah. But you do need a bit of technical affinity because this is a coding tool, right? You need to learn to write a bit of Python. This is
but if I love Python, if that's what I want to do, it's my favorite language in the whole planet.
No, absolutely. This is the way to go.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So first, we saw the Analytics Cloud by Edel. And I think that was for somebody who's not so keen to programming. Is that Edel, how to say it? So this is like somebody who likes drag and drop tools, but wants to do very efficient data preparation, data analytics, machine learning. Would that describe your tool?
Yes. So the Oracle Analytics Cloud is an analytic platform that brings you all the possibilities to do all the data preparation, no matter what are the sources, and you can do it in a very easy way, and you don't have to. For example, you can merge with a data flow, a data set from a Hive table, big data and merge it with an Excel file. So if you have to do it, it will be a little more complicated than just a couple of clicks. And this is what you have to do here, just a couple of clicks. So it's very easy to use. It's more oriented to, unless the data visualization part, to business users. And the idea is to empower business users, and also to allow IT people that doesn't have much experience in machine learning to start it. But if, for example, if you have a huge amount of data, or you are a data scientist, you're not going to use OCE. You're going to use the database if you're a DBA, or you're more into or OCI Data Science, as Jeroen also showed.
Yeah. Okay. So if I have my data in a database and I want to process it efficiently, it's in an Oracle database. Charlie, is your tool then the right one? Oracle Machine Learning, is that the tool for me?
Yeah, I would say it's the right tool in all cases, but yeah, it's the right case in that case. Yeah, it is.
But if I have like 20 years experience on Oracle, and is that the tool that I would feel comfortable with?
Yes, I mean, in fact, most of my customers and customer references are actually people that are just learning and adopting machine learning more and more, because all the planet is getting smarter with ML these days, right? So they already have all their data skills, their SQL skills. SQL is like the number 2 or 3 most popular language in machine learning, because 80% of the data work is data prep and all that, and all you do now is add a couple extra lines of code and off you go. I was going to say, if you do speak Python, we don't have it yet, but it's been overdue for, it's going to be coming in the next 2 weeks for like a couple of months or maybe a couple of years, but it's due this calendar year. So you will be able to also speak SQL, speak Python in the autonomous database, let's say by Christmas time, well before that, but this calendar year. So you can speak, we're trying to be like the United Nations of ML. If you speak R, Python, Notebook, drag and drop GUI, you have your data on premise in the cloud, it all starts with data. And we think that a lot of people store the data in the database. And I think each of the tools have great ways they work together. And I think everyone saw that today. I think they really work. I was serious about that Infinity Glove thing. I mean, when you put all the stuff that Oracle has together, has today together, wow, you can, build. I think you should go beyond a data scientist. You'd start building applications.
So Jeroen, if I love Python, as I said earlier,
right,
or I want to do some image recognition stuff or something like that, is that your tool? Data science, OCI Data Science.
Yeah, that makes sense. Certainly for if you want to build your own custom models on things like images, then then Python is the way to go. Simply because, yeah, the database is not really the place to store to store images maybe, but to build models on, not so much, I think. So
you need GPUs, right? We don't have GPU. The database doesn't run on GPUs.
And it doesn't have GPU. Yeah, exactly.
You got to get some
So
GPUs to do images.
Yeah.
So Jeroen, if I have a library that I really miss from Python and I don't have it in your OCI Data Science, what can I do?
Yeah. No, you have access to. You can just run pip install and you can install the library. That's no problem at all.
So it is just like any Python environment that I work with. I can just
you can say that, but it's only with some automation around it, and it's managed for you. You don't have to install it. And in fact, that's going to happen very soon. There's that you get more control over the list of libraries that you want to have in your environment, right? So you're going to have you will be able to configure that. Right now, it's just an enormous list of libraries that's always installed in your environment, but you will be able to configure that as well and install your own ones.
What if I don't want to choose? If I want to use all these tools, can I do that? Anybody?
I think they go well together. I mean, if you have an Oracle database, my stuff's free, right? I mean, I can't say that enough times. If you have an Oracle database, my stuff's free. The OAC stuff is really a deal, and it's really easy to use, and it works great. And that, I wouldn't try to put all my results into, I would put all my results into OAC, right, Adel? And then the OML stuff that we have is not going to do everything that you could possibly do. A lot of people want to do freestyle or in the wild, download anything and play, experiment. And that's why you want to use Jeroen's stuff there, because you can do whatever you want. Now, if you're going to try and build something in a production environment, you probably want to experiment, do it in the database, display it with Apex or OAC, and you could probably use all of them, I would think.
Yeah, I think that is the good thing, no? That, for example, right now we have a very tight integration with OCE and machine learning from database or from autonomous data warehouse. And it's something that we have been talking a lot with Charlie about the right tool for the right job. So you have all the power of the database. You will have a lot of more machine learning models that you can use and you can create that you can create in OAC. But we are also, the idea is that they are also be an integration with OCI Data Science. So this is another type of machine learning models. If you're a data scientist and you're working on Python, you're working on images, as you said, you already create some machine learning models on OCI Data Science. It's going to be in the near future a way to show all the visualizations that you can imagine, all the analysis doing from OAC. And I think that is the best way, no? So to have all these two powerful tools to create the machine learning models for these particular cases, and then show it in OAC.
That's great. So I don't have to choose. I can use them all. That's
exactly.
wonderful. So Adel, there's a question for you here. So if I'm using Oracle Analytics in on-prem 12.2, does it require to create instance or database in the Oracle Cloud?
No, you're gonna have the analysis. You can connect to the Oracle database on-prem if that is your question. You don't have any problem.
And what if I don't want to take the cloud version of Oracle Analytics? What can I do then? Is there any option?
Yes. There are two options. So Oracle Analytics Cloud has two versions. One is the professional one, which is the thing that I showed, and also the edition one, which is the enterprise edition one, which is also the Oracle BI. So for that, you have exactly the same but on-prem, which is Oracle Analytics Server. And if you have already Oracle BI and you're paying Oracle support, you can have it for the upgrade from your Oracle BI to OES for free. And you want to play only with the data visualization part, it's also Oracle Data Visualization Desktop. So you have different options depending on what you have or what you want.
Thank you. So anything else you want to add to our attendees? So what do you want to highlight? I start with Jeroen. What do you want to tell about machine learning and why they should be getting excited about machine learning?
Because there's just so many things that you can do with it, and there's like there's use cases in every industry and every department. And I also always think from an individual point of view, as a professional, it's very good to have these skills. It's very good to get on board. So I'd recommend anyone to try to do that. You don't have to be a full-time data scientist to take advantage of these things. So yeah, I'd definitely try to, as any technical professional, to get at least the basics of it.
Mm-hmm. Charlie, what do you think? Why should people get excited about machine learning now?
Well, it's fun, right? They'll never be bored. They'll also have a career. And I mean, companies are trying to compete based on analytics everywhere you go. Everything is smarter. Even my Alexa next door, that's just all a predictive model, you know. So the whole world is going that direction, and Oracle's a major player with all the data. There was a thing that Larry Ellison said, you know, a while back at an Oracle World. Why would Oracle succeed in this area? Well, because that's where the data is. And now we have the algorithms in the data. We have all these different offerings that we're talking about. So I think, you know, people can have a lot of fun and also add value to the planet.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Edel, do you have something to add? Why? Why now? Why machine learning? Why is it so exciting?
I think machine learning is happening in our lives all the time. So this is something that we already live with it. Okay, and sometimes, you know, when you are already in another type of, for example, if you're a DBA, or if you're I don't know, a developer, and you say, oh, I have to start with machine learning, I don't know how. Just do it. You know, you can do it with OCE for, you know, for simple stuff, for playing it, and then, you know, just baby steps, right? So start playing with machine learning, then learn a little more about the algorithms. Try to learn also about the math behind that. Will be very interesting, and it's just baby steps. But you have to do it. It's not that. It's very interesting. There are a lot of things, and there are a lot of degrees of things that you can do with machine learning. Just start playing with it.
Yeah, I think we all agree that the whole audience should start with machine learning today.
Yes.
And all of these tools are available, and they are quite easy to use. Depending on your background, what you're going to do with machine learning and so on, pick one of these and start. And as we already learned, that they are integrated together. So whatever you choose, it's not the end. You can go and change to the other, or you can complement the tool with the other tool. So this is really a quite powerful tool set for machine learning, even though you have never tried machine learning before. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much
conclusion.
all for attending. Anything you want to add? All happy? Good. Thank you very much for our panelists. This was great. And thank you for the audience. I hope you got the courage to go and start with machine learning now. And I hope you have better understanding now what Oracle has to offer for machine learning newbies or somebody that's already very familiar with machine learning. Thank you very much for attending. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.